Lawmakers from high-tax blue states like New York, California, and New Jersey are calling for President-elect Trump to raise the state and local tax cap limit, referred to as SALT, which is drawing criticism from some economists. And joining us right now to discuss is Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold. Good morning to you, sir. Good to see you.
Hey, good morning, Jim.
The co-chairs of the SALT caucus did meet with President-elect Trump over the weekend at Mar-a-Lago. But Brandon, you know, this is getting a lot of attention. You say this is a bad deal. It's bad tax policy because it would only essentially provide benefits to a narrow group of millionaires. So explain what these lawmakers are lobbying for.
Yeah, what they're asking for is an increase in the SALT deduction all the way up to as high as $200,000. And when I say $200,000, I'm not talking about people that make $200,000. I'm talking about people that pay $200,000 in state and local taxes. They want to deduct that amount from their federal tax bill, which would give them tens of thousands of dollars in tax relief. I'm all for lower taxes, but what we're talking about here is very narrow tax policy benefiting just a handful of states that are very high tax blue states at the expense, of course, of providing lower taxes on an across-the-board basis that would benefit all Americans.
The SALT deduction, not the problem here. You should know because you live in one of the saltiest counties in the country there in Maryland. The problem is bad tax policy in those states, period, in those counties, period. How much would this cost, and what's being suggested to offset that?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about bad tax policy. And beyond that, we're talking about bad spending policy. If you look at the spending on a per-person basis in some of these states like New York and California, they're spending double almost what they're spending in states like Texas and North Carolina and Florida. And guess where people are moving? People are leaving these high-tax, high-spending states and going to these lower-tax, lower-spending states. So unless we get these problems under control in Sacramento and Annapolis and Trenton and Albany, we're just going to keep having this problem, and people are going to leave these states. The SALT is a Band-Aid. It is not a solution. We need a solution. We need to fix these states' spending problems.
Also, wasn't it one of the biggest problems back in 2017 for House Republicans who opposed the Trump tax bill?
Yes, we lost 13 House Republicans in 2017. The vast majority of them voted against the bill because of the SALT deduction. So It is a huge issue, politically speaking. Right
now, we cannot lose 13 GOP members. You know, they can't do that if they want to extend these tax cuts. So what would be a better alternative?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to be more reasonable here. We can only afford to lose a couple House Republicans. The margin is so narrow. They're going to need to be more reasonable. That $200,000 request is absolute nonsense. They're going to have to come down to something more reasonable, like a $20,000 SALT cap. I don't love that, but if that's what it takes to deliver better tax policy on an across-the-board basis, that might be the price we have to pay.
You mentioned the alternative minimum tax would be a better situation. That's something we should be looking at more closely.
Yeah, in the 2017 law. Yeah, the 2017 law gutted the AMT and really reduced the number of people that it affects. And people in New York and California, these high tax states, were the biggest beneficiaries. So I think that is an underrated benefit of the 2017 law that people have taken for granted. We need to keep that AMT exemption as high as we possibly can so it affects fewer people.
Very quickly, is there enough waste in the budget right now to offset the costs? Or are we looking at a situation from the past 4 years where we will not feel the impact because Americans right now are still going to be burdened to pay off the trillions of debt accumulated during the Biden-Harris administration?
Yeah, I mean, I very much want to make sure that people are not paying for those additional costs of the Biden administration. We need to address those primarily on the spending side of the ledger. And we've ratcheted up spending just to ridiculous proportions. We're still spending as if we're in the midst of a pandemic, and obviously we are not. We need to get spending under control. We need an across-the-board approach where everything is on the table. There are no sacred cows, and we're looking at every single corner of the federal budget. Of course, we want to target things like waste, fraud, and abuse, but we need to go deeper than that to get the size of the government just back to where it was in 2018 and 2019 when the economy was very, very strong.
Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, Brandon Arnold.
Just a second.
Thanks for joining us on this Friday Eve. Have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot. You too.